misbehave.
There we are. Okay, Wits End, you kick this one off.
Hey, you can't take this guy from me.
Okay. Hit record and let's go.
Oh, and welcome to Caching in the Northwest, the only podcast dedicated to geocaching in the great Pacific Northwest. We'll talk about caches and cachers unique to this little corner of the country. So check your ISO and get snapping. It's time to go caching in the Northwest.
And to do that, we need to bring in our snap-happy chimp. Some say he has 35mm to spare, and others say he's just overexposed himself. All we know is he's called Land Monkey.
Hey, he is called Land Monkey, and we were having a discussion before the podcast about mirrored versus mirrorless cameras. So on the topic of being overexposed in 35mm, I'd just like to share with all of our viewers that our wonderful guests tonight have explained for me finally what a mirrorless digital camera is. So I'm just so much wiser than I was before we started tonight. And on that theme of wiser than me, let me introduce one of our very special guests. I would like to introduce fellow Canadian, Dave DeBearmaker.
Hey, how's you going there, eh?
Oh, such a good Canadian he is. And it's my pleasure to welcome my podcasting partner from earlier on Thursday evenings, Daryl W4 from the Geo Gearheads.
Hey, thanks for having me. It's always great to get some more exposure for the Geo Gearheads.
That's a pun. I love it.
Well, I just figured this has to be a punny show.
Oh,
It usually is.
Yeah.
Positively and positively. All right, so you might be wondering what has brought together this power panel of photographic finesse, or photographic finesse. Plus a pre-recorded segment. There's more to come from Sonny Portacio, the PocketLenses.com and Podcacher Podcasts. What brought all this together to talk us through how to take better pictures when we go geocaching? Why, that, of course. But before we get into the topic of photography, how about writing better logs when you're out geocaching?
Indeed, listeners. And as you may have learned by now, we've instituted a new segment each week called Glow, or Geocaching Log of the Week, where we feature a log entry on a geocache that brings a glow to a cache owner's face. We want to help encourage every one of you. I'm talking to you. Stop, pull the car over. I'm talking to you. Thank you. Anyways, we want to help you, to encourage you to up your game, up your logging from just mere TFTCs or a blank space and an invisible period or whatever people are doing these days. And we want to challenge you to create the next glow to be featured on our show. You know, and here's how we go.
Nice. Indeed. So this week, we'd like to ask our guests to read the Glow submission we have to share. And I have to say, ever since we started this segment, I've been striving to write more creative logs. So if you're familiar with the series Seinfeld, this log is going to make a lot more sense to you. So to that end, I wrote this. Daryl, would you be so kind?
Sure. I'm working on that 366-day challenge and needed to find a cache on this date. Lunchtime cache run with Wits End. I was really hoping to duke it out with a drunkard. It's been a tough week at work. Wits End, being the friend he was willing to get drunk, but I was simply not well enough prepared. From this point forward, I will carry a bottle of Hennigan Scotch, the no smell, no tell Scotch, in my cache bag. It always pays to be prepared for any circumstance while out geocaching. If you should need an inebriated team member for any of your geocaching adventures, for a small fee and a bottle of Hennigan's, I'm available. I'll throw back a couple of shots of Hennigan's, and I'll be loose as a goose and ready to roll in no time. And because it's odorless, well, it will be our little secret. EENNI. Sorry, I got a little carried away. By the way, the cache container and log are both in great shape and dry.
There you go. So anyway, if you know Seinfeld, you know that little bit, and I just thought I'd throw that in.
And if you don't know Seinfeld, you're going to wonder what on earth that cop is talking about. And maybe he did have some Hinnigans before he wrote that.
You never
I know
know.
a little bit of Seinfeld. I don't know that much of Seinfeld.
Okay. Well, the previous log entries had said that there was a drunkard there at several of the previous cache finders. They were willing to get in a fight to claim the log, and I thought, well, I could do that. It's been a
Context is always helpful. I
Isn't
find
it though? Yeah. So, getting back to geocaching and not so much Hennigans, we got a bit of news to pass on. This one comes from our friend Brylang, and he posted on Twitter that project-gc.com searches for a list of BB code and HTML tags within your logs and lists them for you. So, did you know Groundspeak has created a tool for manual log conversions? You know they've gone from HTML and BB code to Markdown, and so all these logs have changed a bit. So the real problem is to find which logs need editing, and so to this end, Project GC has created a tool. Just simply log into Project GC, click on Tools, and find Markdown incompatible logs. It's going to go search for them. I had 8. Daryl, you had 4,000?
4,003.
Now, if I understand correctly, that Dave, that was 0 that you were
0. Yeah, I have 0.
I haven't tried the tool yet, but if I'm understanding correctly, this is searching logs you've written, not logs on your caches, unless I guess you've done a maintenance log or something on your own cache.
Right.
Is that correct?
Right. Yeah, it took me a second. I looked at those and go, those look like my logs. Oh, they are my logs. Okay.
Right, because you wouldn't be able to edit somebody else's logs. So.
Exactly.
Right, and the whole point is being able to go back and correct those, so that right now any of that BB code or HTML is visible as code on the cache page or in the app. So the whole point is just getting rid of the code that's sitting there and looking ugly.
So Daryl, you're up to what, 3,500 corrected now, or?
No, I've decided I'm going to leave everything 2015 and earlier. So my first 10 years of caching are all in HTML, or actually it's mostly BB code.
I'm pretty much leaving all mine alone too. I claim just being apathetic, but really it's, I made them once, I'm done, and really, who's going to go back and read my log from 2005 anyway?
Yeah, I have no interest in doing 4,003 logs. Most of it is just linking to other caches and cachers. I just like having the links in there. It makes it easier.
So
It did at one time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But
well, hey, the URL is still there. You can copy and paste.
That's
yeah,
true.
I'm leaving everything today and earlier, personally. So there you go.
Today and earlier. Okay.
So talking about geocaching logs and correcting logs and making logs, we have to go out and find caches to make those logs. So have any of you had any geocaching adventures to log this week?
Well, you mentioned logs.
Logs.
Still doing that 366-day challenge. I'm under 30. I don't know my exact count. But I needed Wits End's help to find a geocache. Now, I'll admit, I had looked earlier without finding it. So when I got back to the office, I told him, hey, I need help with this one. Started reading through the previous logs, and we figured it out pretty quickly. What happened was there was no container or logbook to sign. You had to sign something that was at ground zero. And to me, it actually felt a bit like vandalism.
Vandals.
Yeah.
Sacking the Roman Empire.
I just have to say, anytime you ask me for help and then solve it on your own when I just sit idly by, I'm more than willing to help out in that capacity.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. I appreciate your help in that matter.
Being dead weight, I got a badge in that.
Teamwork. I love it. Oh, that's funny. Hey, well, it wouldn't be a normal week without geocaching, would it? Us land monkeys, we went out on a windy, rainy Saturday, and we hiked some urban trails near the Fraser River in South Burnaby, Greater Vancouver area, and we had about 25 finds on Saturday and wrapped things up on exciting and scenic Granville Island in Vancouver, where we completed a very innovative field puzzle cache. It's GC66MTG. quite enjoyed that. That one actually took us 3 separate visits to finally find the final on that. And once we had found that, we were off to go watch our daughter's improv team win their way into the Nationals for the Canadian Improv Games. So what a Saturday. That was a lot of fun. Anyways, Daryl, how about you? Any geocaching adventures to share?
Well, not really too much that's interesting, but I did get out on Sunday, got 5 caches while I was out running errands. The thing that did make it a little bit interesting was the morning when I got up and started walking the dog, it was -1 degree Fahrenheit. So for those of you not in the U.S., that's -18, a little actually better than -18 Celsius. But I think we were almost to 8 degrees by the time I found the last of those caches. So, at least we were getting a little bit better. And one of those was actually a challenge cache, a 100+ souvenirs challenge. So I got just 4 traditionals, 1 challenge cache. But I really hope to get out more as the weather improves, and I want to try to get at least 2 caches a day for this year. I'd prefer more like 1,000 finds, but the last couple of years I've not really been able to get out as much as I wanted to. How about you, Wits End?
I just broke 1,000 finds, so I know exactly where you're coming. Oh, wait, you're talking in 1 year.
In 1 year. I came close 1 year, I think. I might have actually broken the 1,000 mark. No, I did break the 1,000 mark 1 year.
I broke 1,000 finds in one lifetime. But that was it. Yeah, I found a few here and there. I had a really nice little walk today at lunchtime in a little wooded area right here in town that I had no idea existed. So those are always really cool to find. But yeah, nowhere near the adventures of Land Monkey and whatnot. But I still had some fun and added a few logs without any VB code or HTML, I might add. So there you go. I just did it to CGO and moved on. Dave, how about you? Have you been caching lately, snapping cool photos while you're caching, maybe?
I have the winter months tend to be my worst caching months, but I was sent to California for a work trip at the end of January, and I was able to cache some of San Francisco for the first time, which is a fun place. Did a lot of virtuals. Even found a regular size cache at Fisherman's Wharf, which I was surprised one existed there. Such a large cache, but it was pretty awesome. And of course, San Francisco is just it's photographer eye candy. Everywhere you look. So I got a lot of good photos, especially of the Bay Bridge, which is right outside the office where I work. So, yeah, cool. Lots of caches, lots of pictures.
Cool.
Nice. Oh, now I'm jealous.
Yeah.
I stayed in Tacoma. It's not the same. But we have a bridge. Anyway.
We do.
Tonight, we want to talk about taking better photos while we're out geocaching. So, as we already let you in on, we've brought some experts who actually know what they're talking about.
Yeah, unlike me, right?
No, you're one of the experts.
Oh, I thought you just brought in the guests. And well, of course, we're talking about photography, so of course the question everyone asks, the big questions, well, what kind of camera do you take when you go geocaching?
Well, more often than anything else, for me, it's just my iPhone 6. It's the camera that I got with me at all times. And the big thing is it gives me the ability to post directly and immediately to social media or to attach to the logs. And that's really something that I got very comfortable with in a very quick amount of time. But I also have a Nikon Coolpix P330. That's a nice compact portable camera when I want better optics and actual zoom, not the junky digital zoom that comes with it. But if I'm really serious, I'll pull out my Nikon D700 with any one of the many lenses that's appropriate to that day's adventure. But typically the lenses that go with me are the 24-70 f2.8, the 105 2.8 micro for doing those close-ups like bugs and things. And then the 70-300 f4.5 VR, because that gets me that longer range and a nice light package, which is kind of ironic since that camera's so heavy to begin with.
Now,
Yeah.
I assume you don't take all of that gear with you every time.
Why not?
Yeah.
No. Well, the
That's what the
three
car is
lenses.
for.
Well, no, the 3 lenses that I mentioned with the D700, that's my normal kit. If I don't really know what I'm doing, that's what I take with me.
I don't know what I'm doing most of the time. So I guess I got to pack more lenses.
Hey, more lenses, more fun.
Dave, what about you?
Well, I used to carry around a Canon S100 point and shoot, which is a very capable little pocket camera, but it died. I actually gone through 3 of them in my geocaching career, usually through various incidents involving rain and mud, oddly enough. But now I have a Sony a6000 mirrorless camera. I have a 18 to 200 millimeter lens on that, which if you're not really into camera, it basically means I can go really wide to really zoomed in, which usually handles all my needs. I also carry an Android phone. Currently, it's a Nexus 6 for doing those quick snapshotty stuff. And actually, surprisingly enough, the Android phone also makes a really good panoramic camera. The Google camera app has this really cool 3x3 frame of a panorama. You can take really wide shots by taking 9 photos and stitching them together, and they actually look surprisingly good for what is really kind of a mediocre cell phone camera.
Hey, Dave, does that app work on any Android phone, or is it only for the Google phones?
I don't know if it works on every single phone. It works on all the Nexus phones, and it worked on my Moto X. So it works on. It's not just the Google branded, blessed phones. I think it's wider than that.
Cool. I'll have to try that on my Samsung.
Yeah, give it a
We'll
go.
also suggest the photospheres. Those are a lot of fun to do too.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Very cool. Well, we also reached out to Sonny Portasio of Pocket Lenses and Podcaster fame, and we asked him what top quick tips he would give anyone who wants to take better photos when they go caching. And I'll play some audio here of what he shared. And while we're listening to that, if you guys in the Q&A have any feedback or questions about photography while geocaching, go ahead and type those in, and we look forward to hearing that. And we're going to discuss what we hear from Sonny as soon as we finish listening to it. So let's hear what Sonny had to say.
Hey there, I'm Sonny from PocketLenses.com, and I've got some tips for some quick quality photos while out there geocaching. All right, the first tip is, and it may seem obvious, is to take your camera with you. It absolutely does no good if you leave it behind. Now, I know a lot of people carry smartphones, and they make great cameras. Recently, though, I've been bringing my compact camera or my mirrorless camera out, and it's got a better lens, and I like the pop-up flash. Even if I don't bring an external flash, that little pop-up flash and the better lens are really helpful tools, and I tend to get better pictures than with my smartphone. But just bring a camera. Next, make sure when you're taking pictures to tell a story. Don't just take snapshots. This really kind of makes your pictures stand out. These are some shots that people might not think about and you might miss. So here's some of the shots that you might want to think about getting. The group shot, the big scene, the overview shot, the medium view shots of people geocaching, and then there's the close-up view shots where you get really close and maybe take a look at some of the swag or the travel bugs or maybe the cache itself. Now, if you're a kind of photographer that most of us are, you tend to take one of these kinds of shots and not others. That's normal. Maybe you're the person that's always taking the big scene shot, but you don't get close up, or maybe vice versa. Well, make it a point to take the other kinds of shots and give a more complete photo story. I think you'll enjoy that, practicing and getting those other kind of shots that you don't do too often as well. Also, one of the things you want to do is include uncommon angle shots. Most of the shots that people take when they're first starting to take pictures are from an adult's head height, and that makes sense because you're standing, you have your camera, and you take the picture. Well, try something different next time you're out there. Get down really low and up close, like maybe up to a travel bug or something that people don't get a close-up look to. Maybe you want to take it from really way up high. Or here's an idea. Why don't you set the timer on your phone or your camera and put the camera inside the cache, let the timer run, and then take the picture of what the cache would actually see as maybe like you're looking into it. So those would be some cool pictures to see. All right, here's another one. I know some people are saying I'm not going to do that, is bring a tripod. Now, I happen to use a lightweight, full-height tripod that I carry around most of the time, but here's something to look into. Even those small, tiny gorilla pods, of course, you want to have it appropriate to the size of your camera, depending on how large your camera is, but that's a great way to get some pictures that you wouldn't be able to get without a tripod. Now, the ones that they make for smartphones are tiny, and they weigh almost nothing. You can easily keep them in your geocaching go bag. And by the way, if you keep that little phone clamp attached to the Gorilla Pod the whole time, so it's just one less thing to set up when the time comes. All you have to do is attach your phone to the little clamp, and you're good to go to take your pictures. Here's something else, and this has nothing to do with your camera. It has to do with you and the software, is learn how to edit your photos. Now, if you're on a mobile phone, Snapseed and it's free. It's by Google. It's both on Android and the iOS platform, the Apple platform. It's a great way to edit your photos and get them out to the world. Now, if you're editing on a computer, which I tend to do, I use Lightroom, and that's one of my go-to. I use a lot of other software as well, but Lightroom is one of the ones I use most often. And both of these, Snapseed and Lightroom, can really bring out the best in your photos and give them impact. Now, with these kind of pieces of software, you can bring out contrast, you can boost color slightly, and of course you can crop the images, which is so simple to do, but just by cropping it, you can present the elements in a more appealing way. Lastly, last thing you need to do, and some people skip this, believe it or not, is post. Make sure you share your images. Don't just keep them on your phone or camera. I know a lot of us like to take pictures, and when we go to events, geocaching events, we say, oh, look at this and look at that. We'll post those things. You know, I love to see geocaching adventures that people are having out there, and I know other people like to see it as well. So share those images on Instagram, Facebook, Flickr, or whatever you choose, but the important thing is to share. Share your geocaching adventures so we can all enjoy them too. All right, so get out there, take the photos, edit the photos, and share the photos. And to learn more on how to get the most out of your lightweight mirrorless camera, head on over to pocketlenses.com. All right, stay safe, stay inspired, and keep on shooting. Bye.
There you go. I love that music. I just bounce my head to that all night. But hey, thanks very much, Sonny. That was great. That gave us some really fantastic tips. And guys, one of the things that Sonny brought up that I definitely already do, I thought, hey, yay, that I fit in there. That's bringing a GorillaPod tripod with me all the time. I got one years ago. I use it both for my video camera for when I'm doing vlogging, and also for my my digital indestructible camera that I take with me, my little Panasonic. And man, that thing is super, super helpful. You can wrap it around branches. You can stand it free on the ground. You can do just about anything. And the one thing that I kind of wish I had done, I'll probably eventually do, is you can get GorillaPods with magnets in the feet. So then you can even stick it to anything ferrous as well, which is super cool. But that was one of the key things I took out of what Sonny had to say. Is there anything else you guys want to throw out there?
Well, I'll go for the change of subject, because you'll see too often the same type of photos with everyone in the frame. And one of the things that really is boring is seeing the big wide shot where you see head to toe of everyone who's participating.
Right.
One of my favorite things to shoot is getting really close. So a lot of the time what I grab is the person actually signing the log, where you see just the signature, the pen, and part of their hand. You know, or you'll do like part of the cache, and you know, it's a lot of fun to shoot that stuff. It's good to tell a story that way as well, because you're kind of focusing in, and then as you put all of those images together, you build the story of how you found the cache and what the cache was like, and the viewer gets to fill in that missing information that's outside of the crop.
Yeah, I agree with that. Usually, I'd like to do the same thing, especially if I'm taking pictures of my children. They're kind of young, so having them sign the log is kind of a fun thing, because usually one of the first things my son ever wrote was his name on a cache log. So it's kind of nice to have that, have those memories. And I usually like to take it kind of right behind his head, so you kind of see the side of his head, and then looking down, so you're almost getting kind of his view of signing the log. I kind of like that. But and also the pose shots, like Daryl said, kind of get boring. but I like to take the action shots. One thing with photography is the subject does not always have to be staring into the camera for it to be interesting. And usually the shots that are the ones where they're not, and they're doing something and they're being action and not just posing with the thing. They can be fun too, but getting those other shots can be especially interesting. Especially the shot of somebody reaching under a log and pulling out the cache, or that moment of aha, I found it, can be nice to get.
That's cool. Hey guys, Dave and Daryl, two of the other things that Sunny talked about was editing software and sharing photos, and it brought a question to mind for me that I'd really like to hear from you guys on. How much do you edit or tweak your photos before you share them?
A lot. Well, it depends on what I'm doing. I tend to have two phases of sharing, and part of it is I tend to cache alone. So when I'm out in the field, I kind of like to take a shot of myself with a cache or whatever, for no other reason than to post on social media, and then my wife can see it and she realizes, hey, he's not dead yet, so wait longer.
That's your only communication with your wife there?
It's kind of a nice low-key way to do it. Plus, it shares with everyone else, at least when I'm in the field. But those tend not to be edited very much. But when I'm actually posting them after the fact for like the blog or getting nice photos, I process a lot of them. And one of the reasons is I tend to shoot RAW, which if you're not a camera geek, what that means is cameras tend to pre-process. If you take a photo and you get a JPEG image off of it, which is the standard way cameras work, it does a lot of assumptions of how the image is processed, what the brightness is going to be, what the color saturation is going to be, all that type of stuff. RAW just takes basically whatever hits the sensor, just dumps that to a file. So it doesn't do a lot of this processing. So as a result, you have to kind of do it yourself after the fact. So I tend to do a lot more tweaking for that reason.
I tell people that RAW is all of the ingredients and JPEG is the baked cookie.
That's a perfect analogy, yeah.
Well, and when I'm shooting with the DSLR, I shoot nothing but RAW. It's pretty quick and easy to process that stuff, and especially when you've got the information from the DSLR that has so much more latitude, it's really worth doing that. But in most of the point-and-shoot cameras, even my little P330 that I was talking about before does RAW. I just don't bother shooting RAW with it because it doesn't have the data to really pull out. Some of the listeners are probably going to be familiar with HDR, high dynamic range photos, where you take a whole series of photos and compress them together, squish them together, and then you get better range. So you don't have to worry about that window getting blown out or the shadow under the stairs filling in.
Yeah.
Well, with a RAW image, it has more data than you'd get out of like a JPEG. So you can do some of that stuff without having to take the multiple images.
Yeah. And RAW is the way to go, I think. I mean, I shoot whenever possible. I shoot RAW. Whenever possible, I sleep RAW. It's just the way to go.
Do you not need to know that?
Before we get too much farther down the road here, we've been on the air now for quite a while, and we're doing good. And frequent listeners will know that we love live Q&A, and tonight's live Q&A is full as always. And thank you so much for contributing. But we have such a full show tonight. We're not ignoring you guys. We see it. We're going to get to it. And well, of course, we hang out after the aftermath show here and chat some more. But there was one comment that was the top that I wanted to add in there because Gerald before talked about lenses and equipment. Gerald, there's a great post in there from B. Pendragon I thought you might appreciate. Can you read that one for us?
Oh, definitely. And this is kind of my thing. Is I always need that one more lens. But the correct number of lenses to own is N+1, where N is the number of lenses you currently own. Alternatively, S-1, where S is the number that would cause your significant other to leave you.
Yeah, so true, so true.
Now, the problem is there's at least 3 or 4 lenses I'm always drooling over and want to get my hands on. So
there is one solution to that.
Just taking it to the next power.
It's getting a wife that's into photography.
I was going to say, that always helps. Yeah, so sometimes I've run into couples where she's always lusting for that lens, and it's like, honey, can we just get this lens too?
Yes. Plus, you can have her buy some of the lenses, and you get some other lenses, then you can share, and it's all the thing. But that answer is also true for GPSRs and for bicycles.
true.
So
And
Very
radio.
true. Now, on the subject of buying equipment, one of the things that I'm always asked is what camera system should I go with? Should I get a Canon? Should I get an Sony Alpha series? Should I get Nikon? And really, the best answer I have is go to the friends that you're going to be shooting with, find out what they're using, and buy into that system. Because one of the best things you can do is swap gear when you're out in the field. And when I'm out shooting with my buddies, we're constantly passing lenses around, and we try, outside of that 24-70 that we all own, we try to bring different lenses along so that we have a big stable of lenses to play with. Not to mention, then you don't have to buy all the glass that you want. You can borrow it from other people. And spend the money on the glass, on those lenses. Mm-hmm. It's more important to get a good set of lenses because they'll last you for decades. The camera body these days is not going to last that long. So don't spend the money on the body. Spend the money on the lenses.
Yeah, and just to clarify, we don't all own the 24-70. Some of us still drool over that one. So,
well, and I should note that the 24-70 is great if you have a full frame camera. If you're on a crop frame, like DX is what they call it on Nikon, but most of your DSLRs are actually those smaller sensors. Then you're really looking at...
So.
Yeah, well, and that makes it also a lot lighter and easier to carry, I should add. But that's when you want like that 18-55 is roughly the view size of the or the view angle of the 24-70, and it's just a great all-around lens that gives you great clarity and versatility.
It is a great one, and we've talked a lot about gear, and we could go on. I know I could talking about gear for hours, and it's already tomorrow back where you guys are. So
yeah, we're giving you the preview of Friday.
Good. Friday's going to happen.
Let's shelve the equipment, the hardware side for just a second and talk about subject matter of shooting stuff. I know we already talked about some perspective and angles and choices, but what's your favorite subject matter to shoot when you are out geocaching?
It's a tricky thing because when you go geocaching, you don't know necessarily what you're getting into. A lot of times, if you're going out if I'm going out to be a photographer and just take photos, I kind of have a goal in mind. But when you're geocaching, you never know what you're going to get into. It's for me when I'm going out geocaching. What I'm really trying to capture is the story of the trip, not necessarily the actual geocaching itself, but the things I saw along the trail. If I'm caching with people, the people I'm with, and kind of getting the general feel of how the day went. However that may be, it could be that sweeping landscape. It could be that interesting thing on the trail that you saw. I know I was coming back from a mega event in Georgia, and we came across this cache, and the cache was in the middle of a gigantic model town, like almost like a medieval town made out of little stones. It was in the back of this church, and somebody was making it kind of as I'm not sure why he was making it, but it was fantastic and intricate. And we spent like an hour there just taking photos of all these things. So there were just little stone churches and stuff, and little people, and it was fantastically interesting. And then I never expected that to be there when I went out. That was kind of the highlight of the day. But it's really just kind of capturing the feel and the flavor of the trip.
Yeah, I do love getting the stories, and that's one of the things I do quite frequently is try to grab the story. If people aren't familiar with the 12 of 12, go check it out and get yourself familiar with it because it's a great concept to exercise. And I still love doing it when I can remember to do it, but I still love to do it myself, where you grab 12 photos on the 12th day of every month and try to tell the story of the day or something, and I've always picked a theme. So like one time I'll pick take nothing but photos with the iPhone. Another time it was take nothing but photos with a 50mm lens. Another time it was take nothing but time. So it was things like clocks and the counters on the iPod or that kind of stuff. So you have all of these different things that you can do. Assign yourself that, and you'll get better at telling a story. But I also do a lot of documentation type photography that I don't necessarily share when I'm out geocaching, like a great cache take the photos that are going to remind you how that cache was assembled so that you can get the inspiration from it later. And that's a very different type of technique than what you're doing for the storytelling or for when I go for some of the detail stuff, which I like to do that sometimes too, where it's just something catches my eye that's really cool, really pretty, or like the scenery that's the same kind of thing. That it's an image that stands on its own. It's not necessarily part of the story. And that's, again, a very different type of photography than anything else. So, when I'm out in the field, there's really kind of 3 different things that I'm looking at all times.
Yeah,
Unless, of course, I'm doing Periscope, which is, that's about all I can do.
Yeah, once you start getting used to the idea of taking photos as you go along, your kind of eye and your observance of just the world around you kind of goes up a bit because you're kind of always looking for that interesting shot and that interesting angle. And I found that just my awareness of things around me, I'm not so much focused on, staring at the GPS arrow and walking towards ground zero, but I keep my awareness open about the things around me, and it tends to just make the whole thing more enjoyable.
Well, and it's amazing once you start looking at the world with that critical photography slant, how interesting something like the corner of your GPS can be.
Mm-hmm.
Especially if light hits it in just the right way at golden hour, it's gold.
Hey, and actually, one of the things that you were sharing there, Daryl, about taking photographs maybe just for yourself per se, definitely when I'm earth caching, often I'm taking photographs so that I can remember what I'm actually observing and make sure that I give really good answers when I answer that earth cache later. So I find that's handy. And then sometimes I look at those photos and go, this is a really unique angle. This is kind of a neat shot. And so then I'll share them just because it's like I didn't take it for the purpose of sharing it, but now that I look at it, that's kind of cool.
Oh, absolutely. And you want to kind of get some practice with shooting with like your cell phone for that reference type of stuff too. And just kind of practice with it, get to know that it takes better pictures like this way than that way, that kind of stuff. And you always have to remember, if you've got the reflections on like that sign, just move. That's all it takes. You might not get the perfectly square text anymore, but you'll be able to read it if you move it over to the angle and get rid of that glare.
Mm-hmm.
Right on. Well, and some of the stuff we've talked about earlier as well, Dave, I know some of the photos that you've put out on social media lately from New York and other places, the photos that you've taken and shared. And if I'm not mistaken, I think you're actually selling some of them for larger print, some of the amazing photos you take. Now, photos like that versus maybe photos that you just take off your phone or whatever for social media, is there really a difference in technique that people should be considering if they're taking, let's say, big grand sunset New York skyline versus taking maybe the same kind of photo but just taking it for a quick share on Instagram? Did my question make sense?
It did, but I think we've lost Dave.
Yeah,
I think I'm back. Am I back?
Oh, there
you
you're back. Now he's speaking again.
Excellent. Techniques, yes and no. It's kind of a hard question to answer. Typically, when I have my cell phone in my hand, I'm thinking of different shots than when I have my camera in my hand. That makes sense. Usually the actual technique for taking it is about the same, like angles and all that type of stuff. But typically when I have my cell phone in my hand, I'm looking for that really kind of instant tell the story, usually probably taking the selfie, or the quick shot. I wouldn't necessarily really do much different. But one thing, if I know I'm going to take a photo for a print or a larger format, things like camera shake and exposure become much more important, which is one reason why Sonny recommended bringing a tripod, because when you put a tripod, you can take longer exposures without camera shake. You could just take sharper images, and that really, once you start blowing up, like when you look at a photo on like Facebook or geocaching.com, the resolution is like really incredibly small compared to what actually is being taken. And if you expand a lot of those images out, you can see a lot of aberrations and camera shake that you don't see in the small image because it just gets hidden. But when you blow it up, you can see a lot of those things that would be distracting in a larger image. So really, it's taking the time to set up the camera you can take those shake-free shots. That would be the difference between the social media and the print.
Well, and I'll also add one thing there too, in that prints or anything that's like higher quality, even like if you're doing like the slideshow for home use, you'll be able to see more detail than you can with the social media stuff. So textures and things that are look really cool and look great when it's printed or on the big screen, you might not be able to see those at all when you post to social media. So that's something else to consider, is try to avoid those, because I've even seen some of the textures that come out destroying the image, because you'll get the moire patterns, that like weird zebra striping kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And it just looks weird, and that's the only thing you can see in those photos anymore.
So, guys, we mentioned taking pictures for social media. What is your preferred method or platform for sharing the photos that you take?
It really depends on what I'm doing with it, but I used to post quite a bit to Google+. Not so much anymore, since the crowds seem to have dissipated a little bit since some of the changes they made over there. So I'm doing more to Twitter. I don't like Twitter so much because it's more like a one photo kind of thing. I'm back to playing with Instagram, and that's kind of cool. But that's like the instant sharing. That's like here's the cool thing that I just saw. When I want to do the stories, I hate to say it, but I'm still going to Flickr even after all these years. And I do have to worry that Flickr is going to go away with all the stuff that's happening over at Yahoo.
Yeah, for me it changes again depending on what I'm trying to post. If I'm posting kind of the story of the geocaching adventure, typically that goes on my blog, usually with a text description of what went on, and I share that to G+. But usually for geocachers, most of the interaction is on Facebook. But if I'm posting a shot to be like, practicing the art of photography and taking like this is a shot just for the sake of the photography, then G+ is actually a really great platform for that. There's a crap ton of photographers on G+, and they're really, really good. It's really interactive if you kind of find the right people. So if you want to do photography, G+ is a great way to go. If you want to be a geocaching, telling your story stuff, probably Facebook. Although I also put some stuff on Instagram, because Instagram is like the only social network that is strictly for photography. So it's nice to throw stuff up there as well.
Very cool, very cool. We have, let's jump in a little bit more Q&A. We've got Limax in there, very active over in the Q&A, which is great once again. And one of the things he shared says, there are times when I wished I'd taken more photos or even taken the time to get better photos of some geocaching locations. I think a lot of us can probably agree with that. Probably the best advice I can give on that is just to, it's like Sunny said and like you guys said, is just have a camera with you, whether it's your smartphone or a small compact or whatever, and just start taking them.
Yeah, one thing with digital cameras is that taking the photo is free.
Yeah.
I would recommend, especially when you're just kind of starting out and you haven't really got your eye in, you don't really know what a good angle is necessarily, is get a large memory card. I mean, a 32 gig memory card is like $20-$30 on Amazon. Get a large one of those, and when you go out, just take shots from different angles and different things and see what looks good. And as you get your eye in, you'll be able to recognize those shots. But they are free, so there's no reason. Bring an extra battery too, because the more photos you take, the more batteries you're going to use. But it doesn't cost you anything to take those shots, even if you just end up saying this is all worthless and delete it off your computer at the end of the day. It doesn't cost you anything, and so just give it a try and just try in different angles. Try to hold your camera up higher, hold your camera down lower, left or right. Try to put things in shadows, put things in the sun. Just kind of move around and just take a look at things from different angles, and just take photos as you go. And then you'll I think fairly quickly, if you're kind of critical with yourself, you'll find the shots that work and work for you, because everyone has a different style and what they prefer.
Absolutely, but I will suggest to do not throw all of those photos away that you don't like. If if you have a good one, definitely keep the good one, but keep like one of any subject just so that you have it, just in case you need to go back to it later. Because there's been more than one time that I go, oh, I thought I had a photo of that, and it was probably one that I deleted because I didn't like the image. So I stopped deleting those images now, and I keep all of my images. I just delete the multiple bad ones of something and keep the best one.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah, 'cause who among us hasn't found a really cool location, a great scenery that we never would have found had it not been for geocaching? And you've got your camera with you, hopefully. So document that. And also from the Q&A, B. Pendragon says that we talked about tripods, monopods. A good monopod that can double as a walking stick is also an option. You can just screw your camera on, takes a couple seconds, instantly more stable shots. We talked about more stable shots, and you guys mentioned, and Sonny mentioned, perspective. Just changing your height can be so dramatic with your photos. Higher than normal eye level, lower than normal eye level. And I might add that a walking stick / monopod / tripod can also help with that. Because I'm not all the tallest guy, but sticking the camera on a monopod, and you can get it way up above my head, or even hold it down low and flip it later in Photoshop.
Yeah.
And
The
do fun
perspective thing is really important also when you're taking kid photos and pet photos, getting down to their level. I usually, if I'm really kind of looking at a shot, I usually just sit on my butt and then take photos from there. I don't bend over very well, which is why I just get right down there. But that angle often leads to kind of a different perspective that you may not otherwise see.
Mm-hmm.
Plus, you get a rest, so it works out.
Oh, there you go.
Well, the other thing is that a good monopod with some kind of mount for like your cell phone can help quite a bit. You can turn on the video mode and like stick it in holes and up a tree and get a peek at it that way. But it is also a good way to do a selfie stick for those caches where you have to get the photo of yourself at the cache location.
Well, I think we want to touch one more from the live Q&A. This one comes from Limax, and he's got a good point. He says, I really don't want to have to start carrying an extra bag in addition to my geocaching bag. I currently use the bigger Max
Headroom.
They've got great gear.
Max Headroom bag. And I have some things that probably could come out of that, but but do I really want to fill that back up with camera equipment?
Just take Daryl with you.
Okay.
Well, and this is like the super zooms, if anyone's familiar with those. They're compact, big cameras, so they're not like compact. But the P910, I think it is, from Nikon has been getting some rave reviews because it goes from wide angle to super telephoto all in this tiny little package, and it does it all really well for a small camera like that. And there's nothing wrong with using a camera of that class. They're great portable cameras. Get into something like that P900 series, and it's going to give you some good control as well. Mm-hmm. So think about doing something like that. You'll probably find something that fits maybe in between, too, because for geocaching, you usually don't need a really big zoom lens. You just need something at the wide end. And that's one thing. If you're caching, make sure you have a good wide angle. Because if you're going to be taking those selfies, you can't be like, okay, I'm going to put this on this rock 20 feet away so that I can get into the frame.
Yeah, I mean, pocket cameras, the low-end stuff's okay, but you get a good high-end pocket camera like the S100. Sony makes several. They are really, really, really good cameras. It's a lot of it is just getting the technique down. You may not be able to get the super zoom like Daryl mentioned, but a lot of times you don't need that. I carry the camera like a bigger camera for the reasons that usually it's for reasons besides capturing my geocaching events that I have the camera I have now, which is a bigger camera. But I take it with me because that's the camera I have. But for years I just had a pocket camera and I took lots of shots, and I've entered into photo competitions with really quality photographers and placed fairly decently. Just not to brag, but just to point out that those cameras can take really good shots. Mm-hmm. So don't be afraid. Pocket camera's fine. It's learning technique, learning composition, and how light works that really matters. But as far as bags go, with my Sony A6000, which is what I typically use, which is a mirrorless camera. Uh, I have inserts for my Timbuktu bag, which is what I used to use as a geocaching bag. It's a small Timbuktu bag, and it left me plenty of room. I wouldn't want to go overnight, or like 10 miles, but it was more than enough to pack a lunch and pack some water I needed for the North Carolina summers. And now I have a Peak Design messenger bag, which is designed for mirrorless cameras, and it gives me just a bit of extra space. So there are camera bags out there that do easily straddle the line between holding your camera gear safely and having extra space for all the other stuff that geocachers carry around.
Well, bags, that's another subject that I could go on and on about because I love to collect bags. I never have enough bags.
Yep.
Never have enough cameras, never have enough GPS, never have enough radios. We could go on and on all night long, but we're running out of time here for this very episode. So we're going to come back and check on some of those later. And we're definitely going to hang out at the after show and chat with the Q&A and do that. But before we sign off the official podcast here, if people want to follow up with any of you guys on the interwebs, social medias, or any other such formats, let's do a quick round robin here and say, tell people where they can find out more about you. Dave, start off with you. Where can people find you?
On Facebook and G+, just my name, Dave DeBearmaker. Instagram, I'm DeBear, D-E-B-A-E-R-E. Geocaching.com, that's DeBear is my name there. And my blog, which is usually where I write most of my longer stories, is debear.blogspot.com.
Awesome.
And I'm Daryl W4 on most places. I'm on Google+, Twitter, Instagram, Periscope, geocaching.com, of course. And, you can find me every week with a Bad Cop on the Geo Gearhead Show.
That's true. I think that's where we found you.
I think so.
Hey, you want to come and do another podcast? Because you look like you're bored.
Yeah, Chris just found me and dragged me over here from earlier in the night.
I didn't let him hang up from the previous one.
Guys, Dave and Daryl, thank you very much for both of you for being on the podcast tonight. It has been very educational for me and a lot of fun having this chat. And folks, if you want to find out more about the Land Monkeys and what we're up to next, it's landmonkey.blogspot.ca for the blog. Twitter, Instagram, and Periscope, we're at LandMonkeyGC, and Facebook, it's Team Land Monkey. And of course, always on YouTube, where we're filming more monkey antics. You just search Land Monkey and you'll find us. How about you, my friend, Wits End?
Oh, you monkeys. I am Wits End on every place that I can be Wits End. If it wasn't already taken. So Twitter, Facebook for sure, google.com is /+WitsEndUS, and there's some other creative spellings everywhere on other social media formats. But if you just start at the website witsend.us, it'll pretty much take you everywhere else you need to go.
And, I learned from my friend Wits End. So on Twitter, Facebook, Google+, you can find me at CachingNW.
It's that easy.
It's that easy. I tried to make it easy. It took some work, actually, to make it easy.
See, I want people to have to work for it to find us. I don't know. Maybe I have the whole social media thing backwards, but I don't know. All right. Well, folks, thank you to everybody who's listening to the recorded podcast and those who are watching us live. Thanks for taking the time to listen to this episode of Caching in the Northwest. And remember that you can always be a part of the show. Call 253-693-TFTC and leave us a comment, ask a question, or send us an ammo can montage any time of the day or night. And of course, you can also email us at feedback@cachingnw.com. And remember that your support helps to keep quality shows coming. If you like this show, please click the PayPal button on the cachingnw.com website. And finally, this show is licensed under a Creative Commons Attribution 3.0 license, copyright 2016 by Chris Umfenauer.
Good night, folks.
Thanks, everybody.
And we are clear of the recording.
We kind of failed miserably at our mission, didn't we?
Which one?
The 25 minutes of snappy chatter about snapping photos?
We never hit that mark.
that was very early on, and that's never been taken out of the show notes.
Okay. I was going to say, what were we looking at? About 50 minutes?
Yeah. When
Yeah.
we start hitting the hour mark, we start going, okay, it's time to wrap for sure.
No, that's not bad. That's about where we're at with most of the Geo Gearheads is about that 50-minute mark. It seems to work pretty well.
Yeah.
Don't get the complaints that we used to about the 20-minute thing. That was
20 minutes isn't long enough because you have all the
No.
banter at the beginning. You only
Yeah.
have like 5 minutes to actually get to the meat of the subject. So
Yeah. So yeah, it's a changing world for podcasting.
It really is. Yeah. So let's hit some of these Q&A. I mean, we've got a list, longer than my arm. IHAM starts off with, I got a Nikon camera. Gonna take some photographs. Mama, don't take my Kodachrome away. You followed
Don't
that,
do
right?
karaoke.
Okay. I was doing spoken word.
Oh, yeah.
It
No,
works for William Shatner.
Yeah,
Yes,
yeah, but you're not doing the William Shatner thing.
and you're not William Shatner, sir.
Dave,
You know what
that
else-
hurt.
You know what else you need to sing out?
Hmm.
H-E-double-N-I.
Yeah, you got to sing that one out. Okay, Limax says he just acquired a Canon G16 that I'm starting to carry with me everywhere. I still have the iPhone 6 as well, but I'm going to the G16 even more now. I don't
That's something we
know
do.
that particular one, but it's going to give you far better lens, better glass than any.
I'm guessing he's a Pocket Lenses listener because that is the camera that Sonny was kind of recommending as his camera for the longest time. But yeah, it's a pretty good camera, so you should have good success with that.
Yeah, it's
onto the Sony now, right? Is that correct?
So, I'm sorry?
There's a Sony that I know. I listened to a recent episode of Pocket Lenses, and there was a Sony model that Sonny was talking about. Is that one he's gone to, or just discussing on the show?
He's gone to the Fuji models, the Fuji mirrorless system. There is the Sony system, but Sony's always coming out with crazy stuff. The camera market has kind of shifted from used to be mostly Canon and Nikon kind of driving the market, and when the mirrorless have come out, it's kind of switched over to like Sony and Fuji kind of driving that market, and Canon and Nikon are kind of catching up still. So there's been kind of a shakeup in the standard companies.
well, and the thing I wanted to mention about the G16 is that's one of those cameras that has the Wi-Fi built in where it talks to your cell phone, and we're seeing more and more of these now. I've got a little adapter for my P330 that I just never use because it's a pain and it doesn't work very well. But when it's built into the camera, it works better, and they've come a long way with all of the software on the camera and the apps for the phone. So it really started to become now a viable method to get the photos from the camera onto the phone, and this is something I'm looking for in my next camera. And one of the reasons why I think I might go DX with my next, the crop sensor with the next DSLR, is they're doing 4K, better low light performance than my D700 with this new D5000, and it has Bluetooth and Wi-Fi. So I can take that photo, immediately put it on the iPhone, and send it out to Flickr or
Nice.
Instagram.
The cell phone control, my A6000 has that, and it does have the remote transfer to the phone. But another thing it also has is a remote trigger.
I was just going to say that.
So I can stand in front of the camera, see what the camera sees on my phone, then press a button on the phone, and the camera takes the photo, the high-quality photo, and instantly transfers it to my phone. So if I'm taking that selfie in the field, I don't have to do the arm's length thing, which is really hard to do in a big camera like that.
Mm-hmm.
And I could just stand back, take the better shot, and then immediately be able to post it somewhere, especially to cache logs, which makes better photography all around for everybody.
And it also lets you
really
do things
nice.
like put it up on the monopod and put it over your head to get it up over the obstacles that might be between you and that awesome mountain shot or whatever.
I've never done that, but yes, it would allow you to do that too.
I've actually done that in crowds.
Very cool.
In crowds, or
yeah.
you can look through the fence and go, "Oh, that's a great shot right over that fence."
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right there. B Pendragon says, "My dream camera is the Sony A7S II."
Mark II, yeah.
Mark II basically sees in the dark.
Yeah, they're amazing.
Yeah, well, and most of your new DSLRs are really good at the low light stuff, and what they're coming out with from just about everyone just blows me away.
Mm-hmm.
Guys, I remember, and this is because I'm not really up on digital photography currently, but I remember going back just a few years, everything that came from Sony had a proprietary memory type. Is that still the case with Sony? Like, you have to
No.
buy Sony memory?
No, the
No,
memory stick is pretty much dead.
Yeah, I just buy the random thing. Well, I buy specific stuff off of Amazon, but it's basically generic SanDisk stuff that I buy. I just buy one thing that's important with excuse me, with memory and cameras is buy decent memory cards because they last, and also buy fast memory cards.
Yeah.
Especially if you want to take a lot of photos, because it takes a while to write that stuff to memory. And if you have something like my camera can take, I think it's 16 frames a second if I go in burst mode. So writing that to memory takes a while. So I usually get the Class 10 ones, Class 10 memory cards that write fairly quickly, so you're not spending a lot of time waiting for your camera to write stuff to disk.
Well, and that makes a huge difference too between the mirrored and the mirrorless cameras. Because the mirrorless cameras don't have that big mirror that has to go flipping up and down, they can do 16 frames a second. You get into the mirrored cameras, I think the best of those right now is about 8 frames a second, because every time you take a picture, it's got to do this, with the
Kind of flap that mirror up out of the way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Some of them would actually go into a burst mode where it would lift the mirror so it could do faster shutter actuations, but it's still not as fast as most of the evil cameras are.
It's not that I do the burst mode that much anyways, because it's not that often you need 16 frames a second. But sometimes, especially if you're doing wildlife photography and the bird's about to take off, if you flip it in that mode, your chances of catching the exact wings on the right flap are much higher than. And
what I use those burst speeds for is when I'm doing bracketing, which on the DSLR I bracket almost everything. I do exposure bracketing. I keep the aperture the same and change the shutter speed to get the one up, one down. You have to do that for things like the HDR photography. I just do it for the exposure sweeps. But if you're doing the HDR, that time becomes critical, because you can get things like the clouds in the sky moving, and a second becomes a big deal, especially on like a really windy day. So it's really important to get that kind of speed for things like the exposure bracketing. Yeah, it's not just for the sport, so it's something to consider if you are looking to buy a camera and want to get into something like HDR.
Sports is still huge. I spent a lot of my shots on my son's sports activities, and trying to get the timing of a baseball bat swinging just right when you hit the ball. Boy, you think 8 frames a second sounds fast until you look at it. In 1 second, one frame the bat's on his shoulder, and the next frame he's already swung in the ball.
Yeah, sports is one of those things where almost any other type of photography you can get away with cheaper equipment, and it comes down to technique. With sports, it's like the only thing where you really need to spend the cash to really get a high-end camera to guarantee those shots. Maybe not for your son's game, but if you want to be a professional sports photographer, you're just gonna spend money like crazy to get equipment just to be able to take those shots.
You're gonna get lenses. You need a pickup truck to haul around.
Yeah, and fast lenses and low light lenses. And,
exactly.
Yeah, it's all about the fast with the sports. There's a lot of the sports photographers now. Yeah, but there's a lot of the sports photographers now who are doing the wide angle views. So they're putting the cameras down low near the plate, that kind of stuff. And it's all about getting the really expensive fast lenses, because that's what it's all about, is stopping that action. So you have to have the fast glass, you have to have the higher ISO camera so that you can do the faster
the low
shot.
light stuff is, because stadium light is actually really, really poor for photography. It looks okay to your eye, but it's really poor when you actually put the shutter down.
Well, and it used to be that most of the basketball courts were actually flooded with strobes. So if you were an official photographer, you had a radio slave to trigger those strobes. So they, and you couldn't really tell that they're going off because they're flood strobes. but that was something they had to do to get the basketball stopped when they're in the days of like 400 and 800 ISO film.
Yeah.
And even then, they were still pushing the film to like 12 or 1600 so that they could get the shots even with the strobes.
Crazy. Hey, jumping back to the Q&A, Dora Moore shared, we were talking earlier about what you guys take pictures of when you're out, and she shared that she likes getting pics of the weird and the wonderful, the washing machine in the woods, the alien nailed to the tree, snakeskin on the rock, etc. And I would agree that sometimes can make great shots, and I took a very interesting one the other day of a full-size house door sitting on the top of a rotting stump.
Nice. Yeah, that's what we typically refer to in our group as the odd element shot. We love those odd elements. It gives you so much more interest. And there are photographers, especially like the arty photographers, who will go and carry things into a frame. They'll have that mannequin that they put into the nice scene, and it's just like, why is there this ugly beat-up mannequin in the middle of that flower garden?
Exactly. Let's see. Limax remembers doing manual bracketing back when he was shooting with black and white.
Mm-hmm.
Yep, I did that too.
Yep. Let's see. Back to the monopods. IHAM says you can poke it with a stick. That old adage. But, with the monopod, you can also stick the camera in there and get a shot. And
I've done that. There was a cache that was kind of under a ledge, and you couldn't really get down there, so you kind of had to reach blindly. So I took my camera and just took photos and then when I looked at them on the preview in the back of the thing, I could see where the cache was, so I knew where to stick my hand. Cameras have all sorts of uses when you're a geocacher.
Yeah, if you're looking under something, there's, for instance, there was a cache inside a bamboo, piece of bamboo on a bamboo fence. You take the camera, you can put it on the ground and look straight up the bamboo and find it quickly. You could do it with a mirror, but I didn't have a mirror. I had my phone.
Yeah, doing the front-facing thing, camera. I've done that as well. Yeah, cameras are great.
Wet Coaster also says, I take a camera with me quite often. Unfortunately, I tend to focus on caching or other GPS games and leave it in the bag.
I mentioned shooting my son's sports activities. I was guilty of that. Standing there with the camera in my hand, watching the ball go by. I think, oh wait, I was supposed to take a picture.
Well, and one of the biggest risks is when you start shooting, it becomes everything is through the camera, and you stop experiencing whatever it is. And so, like at the family functions now, I used to carry the camera and grab all kinds of great candid shots. I have some great photos of the kids when they were young. But now I have like nothing because I stopped carrying the camera because I want to actually be in the moment. I don't want to be shooting all the time.
B Pendragon, you'd mentioned you get rid of some of your photos. He goes, "What's a delete button?"
Yeah.
So on that same subject, Limax says, "What do you guys use for photo storage?" I mean, if you're taking and keeping the vast majority of your photos, what are you keeping them on?
Hard drives.
I have hard drives that I keep in the safe and in a backup for the backup or offsite backup for my archival backups, and then for my live I have a RAID system, the RAID 5 with 5 drives, and I just do file system stuff on there rather than like a Lightroom catalog or something, because I've gone through way too many programs to try to catalog stuff, and for one reason or another they always seem to disappear.
Yeah, I always use the file system as well. Myself, all my stuff is Mac, so I have a Mac Time Machine device, which is an external hard drive, network accessible. Also makes a really kicking Wi-Fi access point, but I use that to back up my data. I also dump another copy of my photos on there just because it's easy to access instead of having to go through the backup retrieval. And I back it up to Google Drive, and I also use Google Photos, because Google Photos gives you pretty decent free, largish size photos for free.
Mhm.
So it's a downsize from the photos I take, but it's good enough in the it's the only copy I have left kind of thing.
Right.
So I usually dump it up there just for the backup, backup, backup.
Yeah.
And
Just,
that
And that's
gives you access to those on the go. You can say,
right.
"Oh, yeah, I'm here at my family's house 100 miles away, and yes, I have pictures of that new baby. Here, let me show you."
Right, right.
Right, and I do that for all of the cell phone stuff, so that whenever I get to Wi-Fi access, I'll just open up Photos and let it sync everything that I shot for the day, so that it's backed up somewhere, and I always have it. I used to use Dropbox, but it's just a little bit more painful for cell phone stuff than I'd like.
Yeah, like you guys, I've got a NAS at home that I use. It's a RAID 10 device. That's super helpful. I've got a few of the Western Digital passports that I use for file storage, especially when I'm doing road trips, etc. So definitely helpful. But one of the tips that I found is invaluable is to come up with a good file structure or folder structure system, because otherwise, if you just keep dumping stuff on, you're never going to find it.
Yeah, yeah, and the EXIF information is helpful, but what I end up doing, and this is a preference thing. Some people do it by subject, some people do it by jobs if they're actually doing commercial stuff. But I just do it by date, and then I divide it up beyond the date into the location usually.
Or
So
event.
yeah, yeah. So I'll have multiple folders. And to sort, you do year, month, day, so that it sorts into the right order in the file system.
Right.
Yeah, I tend to do by major event. A lot of my photography comes from road trips, so I'll just have I'll usually the year I'll go 2015 Canada, and then when I went across Canada this summer, all the photos from that just get dumped in there. So if I know, hey, I was on that road trip, I can find it in that list. For the more generic stuff, like I just rent random geocaching on a Saturday, and it's not really a big event, then I'll have like a 2015 geocaching folder and just dump stuff in there. So I'll know usually where it is in the in there. And I have I have other structures, like for the blog. I have a special folder for I call it for the blog, and then under that I have subdirectories. And so for the photos that I'm gathering up for particular posts, I'll stick in one of those subdirectories just so I have them there. But that's typically. I also have a more complicated system of I keep them in the root folder is whatever computer I import them on, which is usually my laptop. And the reason for that is my laptop is my portable studio that I take with me, and it's also the thing I use when I'm upstairs and I'm watching the kids or whatever, and I can't really be in my office downstairs where I am now, where it has my big stuff and my big drives. So I keep in Google Drive, I have a folder specifically for stuff that's on my laptop, and then I have a separate folder for things that are on my desktop. And both are synced to my desktop, and only the laptop stuff synced to my laptop. So when I'm downstairs and my office, I have access to everything, but I'm on my laptop. It's usually the stuff that's current, like my last trip or the last photo walk I went on. So the stuff are kind of in the process of processing, and then it eventually filters off to being all on my desktop, and from there I do it en masse for backups and whatever.
We've got a question and an answer both in the Q&A.
Excellent. The question match thing.
Yes, Limax
Excellent.
starts off and says, "Is Google Photos what they're now calling Picasa?"
No.
Brylang pops in and says, "Picasa's being retired. Google Photos is the replacement."
Yes.
So, there you go. We have our listeners helping each other out.
Nice.
B Pendragon says ISO 8601 is the best date system. That's a computer programmer saying that.
I believe that's your month day, if I'm not mistaken.
I think it is. You're right.
Yeah.
Yes. Sort order. If you can't sort your dates, you're doing it wrong.
Oh, interesting. Limax, come on, click for me.
Is that what he said? That's kind of a
Yeah,
weird.
Limax. And I can no longer select anything. Limax says, I went to a place called Daffodil Hill, which is up in the Sierras. I witnessed somebody carrying around a camera bag that was about the size of a medium-sized ice chest.
That's a big camera bag.
That's a big camera bag.
Some photographers get crazy with their gear. I don't understand how they do it and why they do it, but they'll lug everything into the field, and they'll use it too. Some of those pro photographers, especially if you're
Daryl, for some reason I've lost all control of
Yeah, that does tend to happen when you get a lot in the Q&A.
Q&A. So I can read the Q&A. I can't flash it up anymore, and then I can no longer select who's being shown at the
right
on the video.
But some photographers will bring lights in the field, and like all sorts of gear that make really, really, really fantastic photos, but it's not really necessary. The biggest thing.
Well, it depends on what you're doing.
I mean, if you're actually a professional photographer, but if you're just trying to capture the moment and trying to take a bit more of an interesting photo, the main thing that really, really matters is composition. You can have a photo that's noisy and is not well exposed and is blurry as heck, but well composed, and it'll be an interesting photo. But if it's not well composed, it could be the sharpest photo ever, and it's not going to be very interesting.
Right.
That's true.
Yeah, but you get into some of the medium format stuff, which is now like digital, and especially when you're out in the woods, people love, and there's not many of them, there are people that love doing that with the shift lenses and a digital back. Or I've even seen people playing with bellows and a digital back, and they're medium format backs, so that medium-sized ice chest is like the camera. That's it's like the camera. That's about it. So it's kind of a relative thing, and if you get into like even the full frame cameras, your lenses are bigger and heavier too. I've got lots and lots of gear. I have a huge bag that if I wanted to, I could carry most of my photography equipment in this one bag. I just never use it. It's
you could put your photography equipment in it. Could you actually carry it?
Oh yeah. Yeah, and I have.
Daryl's going out and shooting in IMAX format.
Yeah. Well, and keep in mind, I have two different camera bodies right now that I actually do use. We're talking about full frame versus crop sensor. If you're doing something like sports, the crop sensor stuff is awesome because most of the time bird photography too, for that matter, most of the time you don't want that wide angle. So the crop sensor means it's a tighter view, and you don't have to have a 300. Instead, you can have like a 200 millimeter lens. So when I go for things like the air shows, when I go for bird photography, that kind of stuff, I'll take the DX camera, and I still most of the time carry the big lenses because it gets me even that much more distance that I can tightly pull in. And it's that much lighter body. So I've actually gone on shoots where I'll load everything up into this bag, not often, but load everything up into this one big bag, throw that into the car, and then just carry the one camera and a lens or two with me. And then I can go and shoot the birds over here, and as the sun starts setting, I can go and get that nice landscape shot.
The birds and the bees.
Yeah. Well, no, if I'm shooting the bees, I do get a little bit closer, and that's not much fun. Hey, if you guys like looking very closely at butterflies, go check out my Flickr stream.
Yeah, I remember that. You did some.
Oh, I loved going into the I forget what they call it, but the butterfly house basically at the Detroit Zoo, and I was playing with the macro lens, getting some awesome stuff for a while with the D700 doing macros where I'm like literally in the face of the butterfly, getting like just the eyes and stuff.
Cool.
Mm-hmm. You have no idea how interesting butterfly wings can be until you get that close too. It's like little tile mosaics.
Yeah.
That's very cool.
Dave's joined us again.
That's
Good
nice.
thing we never knew he left.
Dave, do you want to do a podcast tonight?
Sure. What subject?
We don't care.
We're talking about the tile mosaics on butterflies.
Oh, sweet. Butterflies sound delicious.
They can be.
It's butter fried.
Yeah,
Oh,
it's-
that's
you have to have the right amount of butter for a butterfly.
Yeah.
Butter fried butterflies.
Oh, let's see.
What else we got?
Limex has lots of photos of butterfly habitats across the country. So there you go. He also loves taking pictures of faces in trees.
Oh yeah. That can be fun. One of my buddies has a thing. He looks for the number 67 anywhere he goes. So it's a standing thing that anywhere he goes, he has to get 67.
Why 67?
Because that was the Detroit riots.
Okay.
He
Oh, yeah, that
lived
would be
through the
reason.
Detroit riots. Actually, I don't remember exactly what the story is, but the Detroit riots are a big thing with him. So it was why he couldn't go into Detroit as a kid.
So it's made an impression.
Yes.
Exactly. If Three Hams is still listening, he sent in breaking news: Richmond Geocaching Extravaganza event May 1st, same bat time, same bat place as last year.
I looked at that, and my first reaction was, why do I care about an event in Virginia?
Yeah, no, different Richmond.
Richmond, yeah.
Hey, because this
Send us
time
an
we have.
email and we'll talk about it next week. We'll mention it next week on the show.
Sounds good.
But yeah, this time we have almost half the panel that's not from the Northwest.
Almost.
True.
We
Almost.
still have a Northwest majority.
Yes.
So
We're working on it.
okay, we need to wrap it up. It's very early for you two.
Yeah. It's
And
1:30.
late. Yeah, and it's late for the rest of us. But do you have an opinion? What's the best mirrorless, weather-sealed camera on the market?
I do not have an opinion, but and at this point, I would not go for an interchangeable lens camera if you're looking for that weather seal, because anytime you open up the camera, you're going to have a risk. But I'd look at probably the RX series from Sony. Those things just always impress.
Yes, Sony's really on top of the game. I don't have a really opinion either. I'm not really much of a gear guy when it comes to stuff like that. I just have the camera that works, and I concentrate more on learning how to use it. But Sony is really kicking butt in that space. Compact camera-wise, they probably have some of the best in the market. That isn't like insanely expensive. So I would look there first.
Well,
So
and this is one of those spots where the brand and the system doesn't matter as much because you don't have those interchangeable lenses
Right.
to swap around. It's get the camera that works the best for you and the way you want to work at that time. And it's not going to be this, the same thing for everyone. If you're looking to shoot sports, it's going to be a lot different camera than if you're looking to shoot, landscapes. And
Well,
Yet-
this
Go ahead.
one's weather sealed, so it's an
Yeah.
outdoor landscape
Yeah,
type
he's
camera.
yeah.
Jay, what are you using?
So I use a Panasonic. I was just looking to see if I have it on my desk, and I don't right now, so I can't remember the exact model number, but I'll share that out on the social medias tomorrow. But it's I think this was interesting that this came up because right away, Dave and Daryl, you guys went to if it's weather sealed, then you don't want exchangeable lenses. And I think one of the things I found, and I think Dave, you were the one who mentioned this earlier on in the show, of going through a number of cameras, and we went through a number of digital cameras until finally I said, this is ridiculous. I'm gonna buy like a indestructible weatherproof camera, because what I realized is it's exactly what you and Daryl were just saying. It's know what conditions you're going to be taking photographs of and what kind of photos you're going to take, and get the right camera for it. And as much as I would love to have one of these mirrorless cameras with different lenses and be able to take all these kind of different shots, it's not going to live. Like, I am going to kill it because I know how I geocache and hike, and I need something that is going to survive snow, freezing, going underwater, bouncing off the sides of rocks. That's just life with me. So
I will say, what for my kids who are 3 and 6, so really young, we got them some cameras because they were showing interest in photography. And the one I went with, it was a Coolpix. I think it was an S33. And the reason why I got them, it takes fairly decent photos, but it ranked high in the list of rugged cameras. But they were like, you could drop them from like 5 feet. They were rated to that like minus 20 Celsius. So they were fairly decent cameras. But you're right, you need the camera for you, and not all cameras. I mean, if you're going out kayaking, geocaching, maybe a GoPro is the best way to go. If you're, I mean, a GoPro is great for the wide-angle shot. You're not going to be able to take a picture of that deer that goes through the woods at 200 feet away and get a good shot of that. But your camera will survive if you tip the kayak.
In that case, you have to throw the camera at the deer.
Right.
Yeah,
but it all comes down to really what you want. And I mean, if you're kind of looking for what's the best camera for me, and you really have no idea, just get something middle of the road that's not breaking the budget, and then practice using the camera. And once you have a camera in your hand and you're using it, that will quickly dictate what type of photos you want to take, and then from there you can research the better models for that particular use case.
Good advice.
Well, and something to mention with DSLRs and the interchangeable lenses is I've run into quite a few people who are of the mindset, I'm just going to get a cheap lens because I'm going to be taking photos at sand, snow, that kind of thing. The cheaper lenses are not weather sealed. You will destroy a cheap lens. A good lens will last you quite a bit longer, with some exceptions, of course. You have to do your research, make sure it is a weather sealed lens. But I got a cheap 70-300. My girlfriend at the time took it over to Africa. Just the sand and stuff in the air destroyed the lens.
I've heard the color runs, where they're putting all this colored powder in the air, destroy lenses that are not sealed well. So.
Oh right. Yeah. So you got to watch out for that kind of stuff. It makes a huge difference. But I've had like that 40 to 70 or 24 to 70. I've had that thing for probably over a decade now. I've had a couple of the other lenses for much longer, and they've gotten rained on. They're in the dirt and dust, and no problems whatsoever with any of that gear. And it's because it is the good lens, and you spend the money on the lens if you're going for a DSLR, and it's going to last you for decades. That's where you want to put the money. You might have to replace your camera bodies every 5-10 years, but we're in the digital age. That's what you do. That said, I think I got my D700 shortly after they came out, and I'm still using that D700 today.
Yep.
Still shooting the D90.
Yeah, which is even older. That's about 11 years old, 12 years old.
I don't know. Lost track.
I'm down from you guys. I'm shooting the D3300.
It's a lot newer though.
Oh, that's a new camera.
It's a newer one, but it doesn't have all the features of the bigger one. But it's what I could afford.
Yeah,
and
it's a good camera.
It's a good camera. So
yeah, and spend the money on the glass, and you can use that glass on the next camera you buy.
Exactly. So yeah, that once you have a good camera and you're comfortable with it, you start buying lenses. You're stuck then, or you're invested, I should say, into that company. So for the three of us, it's Nikon. That's where we are.
Right, but now when you're in the Nikon system, Nikon F-mount was done back in the 50s, I think. Maybe it was the 60s, actually. So it has the widest body allowance of any of the cameras. That means there's adapters for almost every other camera system out there because it allows for that extra space. Sony has the narrowest body allowance. So Sony cameras have adapters for almost every other lens format out there, full frame style lens format. So if you have an EOS or a F-mount, you can put it onto a Sony with an adapter. So something to keep in mind if you want to play with one of those new cool Sony cameras. It will take anything, but you have to buy the adapter, and because it's the adapter, it might not have the full functionality of the vibration or optical stabilization.
Sometimes lose a stop at light too, or half stop.
Yeah. But that's why almost everything that you'll see in the scientific community is built around the Nikon F series, because the Nikon F is like the universal mount that anything can go to.
Interesting. Hey guys, just to answer the earlier question, what I actually did is I just opened one of my photographs and went to the details on the info on it. My camera is a Panasonic DMC TS2.
See, and I have the TS1.
There you go.
And I'll say for the all-weather, waterproof cameras, I am a big fan of the Lumix series. They're not going to give you the image quality. They're not going to give you the flexibility of a non-waterproof camera. But I've had some cheaper ones like the Olympus. I've had some more expensive ones from Olympus, and they never did anywhere close to the image quality, and they would break much quicker. This Panasonic I've had, I think, for 6 years.
I'll tell you, the things that my Panasonic has been through, I will attest, those are fantastic cameras.
Yeah, and one of the big problems with a lot of the cameras in this style is it's got the optical zoom, but it's got some extra mirrors to handle that. So there's moving parts inside the case, and they do that so that it won't, it doesn't have to like zoom in and out of the shell, which allows for water to enter. So it's an up and down periscope essentially. And a lot of cameras in this series, not from Lumix, but the series of design, have had problems where if you drop it, the lenses get out of alignment. So it's a great concept that hasn't worked as well as it should for a rugged camera. So Lumix by Panasonic has been very reliable ever since that line came out. And it's not overly expensive.
No, they're not.
Right. Gentlemen, I think we should call it.
Who are we calling?
The show. We've got so much. I mean, we could have done another
Caching in the Northwest. Caching in the Northwest.
Yes.
We may have to have
You have a call-in line for.
White courtesy telephone, please.
Nice.
So.
GCD?
Oh, you said it. It's time to go. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks for having us.
See you guys.
You guys.
Take care.
Oh, I can't stop the broadcast. I'm going to hang up.
Okay. I'll see you next week.
Okay. Bye now.
Take care, Gerald. Thanks for joining us.
We're live forever.
Yeah, I can't hang up. My whole page has stopped responding.
Really?
Oh, and there he goes.
Oh, and he's gone. I wonder if he's going to try to rejoin. Maybe we should just keep talking all night long.
Well, I don't know if I'll keep talking all night long, but I can leave the camera on.
That would be fun.
It'd be terribly interesting for people to just have this video of the wall and a microphone.
I wonder if I can connect in and as a second connection here.
Oh, okay.
Now it's a challenge. Now I have to see if
Join as caching in the Northwest. See if you can wrest control.
Let's see.
Brian Lang posted GCD in the Q&A. That's funny. I didn't
But
even see
of
that.
course he did.
Buried down there somewhere. That was a really good episode. That was a lot of fun.
Went on and on and on.
Yeah, it did, but man, there's so much to talk about on that topic. It was awesome.
It says I have to end the other call. Let me see if I can join as Caching NW.
Okay.
Hold, please.
Your call is important to me. Hey,
And
it's
I'm here
you.
now. And there's a stop broadcast button.